welcome to my podcast, Spiritual Quest, with me, your host, Vibeke Garnos, always guided by Spirit. I am very excited to share my gift with you and empower you to embrace your gift. So if you define yourself as a spiritual human being, then you've come to the right place. So prepare yourself now for an amazing journey where your soul will lead the way. Hi there, and welcome to a new episode of the Spiritual Quest podcast. Most of us have experienced falling down in life and questioning the meaning of life. And giving your power away or allowing others to take it from you is sometimes something most of us have experienced, I guess. And if you have, then you know how it totally disrupts your path in life. And sometimes the hard times are something we must experience to help us ask the deep-rooted questions, like why you chose to come to Earth. Why are you drawn to certain people and experiences? What are you here to learn? What's your purpose in life? And how do you find it? Well, today's guest can help you find answers to these deep-rooted questions and help you connect with your authentic self. She's a Theta Healer working with different energy healing methods. She's also a Reiki master and teacher and helps clear properties to create clean and sacred spaces. Working with the Akashic Records, she gives readings about your starseed origins, life guidance, spirit guides, and helps to remove obstacles on the life journey. Jade D'Cruz is a multi-award-winning documentary filmmaker who experienced a deep fall into the deep night of her soul before returning to her authentic self. It's my pleasure to introduce the passionate Jade D'Cruz. Welcome to the Spiritual Quest podcast, Jade.
Hi, welcome. Bye back. Thank you. Thanks for having me. So exciting.
I'm so happy you decided to come and join me here because I have many questions for you. But, I'm excited to learn more about your story and how you have managed to return to your authentic self after falling into the deep night of the soul. So I assume a lot of people know what we're talking about, but would you please just share a little bit about what you mean by the dark night of the soul?
Sure. So the dark night of the soul, I guess, is a phrase used by a lot of people in the sort of spiritual realm, genre. Really, the dark night of the soul it's a combination of you confronting the parts of you which really need healing. Um, and it can happen in many different ways, but at some point, because soul has to evolve, I mean, we're all on a process of soul evolution, so whether it's in this life or in another life, you're going to have to confront those parts of you. So the dark night of the soul is really that journey, and the challenges actually that it brings. It's the empowerment and the growth of the soul's journey.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that. I know a lot about actually Dark Night of the Soul because I've been struggling myself twice in my life. I've actually had a deep dive into it, and of course, I would share it, but I want to hear your experience with the Dark Night of the Soul and what really happened and what's your story? What was your experience?
Yeah, so I have to say my experience was very rare. I actually was encountered by a bit of black magic. It's something which I'm still trying to work out why, but I was working in film abroad, and it wasn't random, but somebody put some black magic on me, and that kind of trapped my energy. And I mean, some people do talk about black magic, and I know that People think, oh, a lot of it's woo-woo stuff, but actually I had it verified by an incredible top world healer, who sort of said to me, 5% of people actually have come into contact with black magic. And
Five
also through my,
percent of all people. I mean, so you're in the 5% of everyone on this planet. Am I understand?
so 5% of the people that come to him,
Mm.
sorry, who believe that they've been, have encountered black magic and that it's affected their lives. Usually 95% it's up in the head, but actually 5% it's true, and I'm part of that 5%. Um, who knows why it happened? It's probably a long story for another time, but it literally broke me on all levels. It stopped me when I was just about to embark on a very successful career. I couldn't work anymore. My potential was trapped. It was essentially done to me through jealousy, just because I think somebody wasn't happy about their own lives, and I was receiving a lot of success. It trapped me financially. I couldn't work. I went from being an up and coming successful filmmaker, and winning lots of awards, to then not being able to get a job making tea, in a supermarket. It affected my family, it affected everyone. And the worst thing is, when something like that happens to you, is you don't actually automatically think black magic, because it's so,
No.
so you try to work out what is going on. Why can't I do the things I used to do? The success when I became homeless 3 times.
I'm
I
sorry,
read,
I have to ask question because I'm so curious, Jane.
yeah,
Because I'm sitting here, I'm literally saying, keep the light, bring the light. Because black magic, I don't know too much about black magic, but I know it's something that I choose not to dive into personally. I've never really had, the need to do that either. But when you speak, I'm so curious because all of these things appeared in your life that was blocking you from living and being who you are and taking away what you've created already, right? As a soul, you had this path and it was taken away. And I'm thinking, okay, this is powerful stuff. I mean, we know how powerful our souls are in the
right,
creation process. And it makes me, have you made any thoughts or had any thoughts about how this
happened.
yeah, how, but I'm thinking how is not even a good enough question. We need to go deeper. You know what
Right.
I'm trying to ask you, right?
Yeah, sure. Because the thing is that, we all say in the spiritual world, nothing happens without your permission. It's not possible that this can happen without part of me allowing it. Well, I have to actually, the thing with black magic, and I'm not an expert in black magic. I only know through my experience and through a few experiences that I've now heard from others. It's beyond that.
Mm.
So actually, you, I don't know if before I came into this life, I had agreed to it. I'm not sure I can even say that, because I had many, many, many warnings, huge warnings not to do certain things. I still did it because I was curious. And that's when it
Can I
happened.
please ask what certain things you're talking about just to get it more in tune
Yeah.
with what you're talking about?
I had a huge warning dream. One of these big awakening dreams that I wasn't even supposed to go to the country, in which it happened, before I went. I think I had, well, I know my spirit guides actually appeared to me in reality, blocking me and trying to not make me go a certain way. And so it happened with my fingerprint. Somebody asked me to put my fingerprint on a coin, and I knew the moment they asked, this was very odd, and in that split moment, I could have changed course of my life.
Mm.
But my soul, you see, I've always been very spiritual, very divine, very synchronistic. My soul was like, nothing can happen to me. Like, it's not possible. And I'm very curious. And so I thought, whatever, just put your finger on there. It's fine. It's all in your head, the fear, right? No. And so that then started what I would say is literally almost 14, 15 years of being under this, in this trapped energy and not knowing.
Is it a spell? I have to ask you, is it a spell?
Yeah,
it is a
was
spell. Yeah.
Yeah.
That somebody put on you specifically.
Yeah. Yes.
And within that spell, you are trapped soul-wise. Is that to understand that your soul is trapped within the confines of that spell?
Absolutely.
And it's like an imprisonment on the other side in lower vibrations. Okay.
Yeah. So it is the way I can explain it to you is because I had a dream during that time. So it's like being in an underground tunnel where life is happening up there, and all your potentials up there, but you're under this glass ceiling almost. You don't realize it, but the minute you try to create, it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And
your power is taken away, like the spirit power, your soul power, and your human power, because of course what you create comes from that spirit. So you're completely confined to that spell. You're not able to move in any direction. That sounds horrible. I'm sorry. That's I don't know. I don't want to say it's worse than death, but working with people who's crossed over, stagnated on the astral level, it sounds like you're there, but you're even closer to Earth because you're confined, like within a spell bubble, and nobody's seeing you, nobody's tuning into you, you're like nothing. That must be the most horrible, lonesome. I can't find the words. So how did you break free from that? First of all, how did you discover it? And how did you break free from it?
Right. So two things happened. One is that spell, which traps you. Then when you are in that low vibration, because your vibration and your frequency is always low. I actually also had an experience where I was taken to another dimension, and I had my career kind of taken from me. So actually my career was taken because I was vulnerable and already trapped. So it's a combination of two things. I didn't understand what happened or what was happening for many, many years. It took a very long time, but at a certain point, divine intervention came in. Certain point, I was able to break. I'd got myself to such a broken point from the continuous trying to make my life work, continuous challenges which were beyond normality and beyond the scope of your conventional spiritual healer, who couldn't understand what was happening. At a certain point, I had a divine intervention. Then my timeline was shifted. I started channeling information about what happened to me, and I started connecting with source energy and various different high frequencies. Yeah.
Oof, that was a lot. I'm just trying to wrap my head around it because I know from a spiritual perspective what you're talking about. I've encountered through, I've been doing this work now. Well, I've been open my whole life, so I've seen spirit since as long as I can remember, both good and evil and
Mm.
all in between. But I've also, but from a human perspective, knowing what you've gone through, it makes me think um, about, a lot of other people that we don't
Right.
know stories, right? And there's so much to the human experience that the human part of us don't understand and don't remember. And you had to kind of get these visions within your dream state to actually be open to have a portal into whatever was going on to you, on with you. But what would you say to people who now is getting the shivers? Because I know there's a reason we're talking about this. And some people are going out, ooh, maybe I
I
should
know.
look into spells.
Yeah, there's a real taboo about this stuff, and if you're getting the shivers, it's honestly, it's so rare. It's not random. I mean, it's not like you're going to go away and someone's going to put a spell on you. It doesn't work like that. You know, the person who did this to me didn't actually know what they were doing. They were messing around in a bit of voodoo,
Mm,
not realizing the intensity. And it was done, so through my healing I've understood it's done because this person was jealous of my energy, and that's because that person in themselves was not happy. They were not fulfilling the potential in their own life. And so much of my work now is about bringing your own joy and uniqueness about who you are, right? We're here to be ourselves, because I feel that my experience, um, and I was always myself, but I feel like I need to help people do that,
mm,
uh, because I know that the person who did that to me, that was the reason. She, they didn't intend it to be
mm.
what it was.
Yeah,
I know,
two things that's coming
right?
to mind now is I remember a long time ago when I did a lot of house clearing, and I was kind of known in the area for that kind of work. I was also in the media. So I had some girls come to me asking to do an interview for a school project. And I remember I invited them into my office at that time, and we sat down and they started to tell me about their Ouija board activities. And I felt this force come into the room, and a force of light and good, to be, just to be clear. And I had a really heart to heart, soul to soul with these girls. And I said, you have no idea what you're up against. And it was just for a bit of fun. They had no clue what they were doing. They had watched some TV. They had tried some techniques. They Googled, how to see spirit. And they tried out different things in their life. And they were starting to get freaked and spooked, and they were
Mhm.
starting to experience things. And so that's why they actually had their teacher agree to make this a school project and to talk to me. And that makes me think of, for everyone who's listening or tuning in, please, please do not, dive into things that you know are black or bad or low vibrational energy just for the fun of it. I mean, it really is. I think that's a warning. It should be a warning sign on what you just told us, that this can really create bad things for others. And to be honest, I'm bringing myself back now. And I can remember that I was at this hotel in Norway. It's a very old hotel. It's one of the oldest one on the West Coast. And I was only 18, and I was there with my schoolmates, and we were you just spending that one night. And we also had some seance going on. It was my early age. I had my spirit guide, and they were so curious. And I said, okay, I know how to deal with this. Yes, I did, but they didn't. And this
Mm.
one guy, he got so spooked that I remember he wasn't feeling well. If you understand what I'm saying, he wasn't
Yeah.
himself. He was very much afraid of anything that was out of his control after that experience. And I worked hard to kind of release that and forgive myself, and to work through my teachings of being a spiritual teacher and having this gift, and knowing, I think I've done all the mistakes in the book. If there was a book about, being a channel or doing house clearing or whatever, I've done most of them. But I've
Mm.
always been protected. And I guess that is my next question to you. You going through this, and you
Mm-hmm.
said you might have chosen this on a soul level. I know for certain, after discussing it with my spirit guides Audios, that he said that I needed this, and he was allowing me to do this without interfering, for it was part of my lesson to learn how I should serve, and kind of separate the ego part from the soul part, and the human part from the soul part. So for me, it was very important for my journey. And looking and listening to your story right now, how do you feel about, this experience from a soul perspective?
Yeah, so that's a fantastic question. It's something I'm always still trying to understand myself, only because prior to the experience, I was, already quite, I mean, I've always been very spiritual, very intuitive, very on cue. So I questioned, why did I need this? What am I learning? But I ultimately think that, well, a lot of it is when you're fear based. Okay, so um, if you, like you said, dabbling and around things that were you a bit like the young man you were talking about, just fear doesn't don't want to go there. You don't grow. So I think a lot of it is that I had to challenge that fear, because there was a fear before of like voodoo and Ouija boards. I mean, I remember I was in Brazil the year before, um, and I was like, oh, it's all a bit weird stuff, but there's definitely something happening here. So I think I had to challenge myself. I had to confront all the dark fear within me, and I actually had to lose everything. I had to lose all my power in order to rise in my power. So I spiraled dramatically down, I mean, lower than I ever thought. And I know through my own readings and things that I've had many lifetimes always very low frequency, just something that my soul went through hundreds of years ago. And I think that I had to release that. And I could only release it by going even deeper, which is what ultimately happened in this life. Something cracked even more, couldn't go lower than what I was. I was hitting the curb for years. And somehow, divine intervention, somehow things came to me. And I started to grow in my power and realize what I was capable of, but in a very different way to when I was very successful in filmmaking.
So did it take time for you to discover this, or was it like an awakening? You're saying it's a divine intervention, but did you see it right away? Like you woke up and said, "This is going on. I have to change it."
Uh,
Was it like,
so I always knew deep down this is a spell. I just
Mhm.
knew it,
Of course you did. Of
right?
course you did. Yeah.
But being in this world, it's like, who's going to confirm that for me? I mean, people are just going to think I'm loony. And it took many years until I actually encountered a spiritual healer who said, hey, look, this has happened. It was a psychic who explained to me exactly the situation and scenario that I was in years ago. And I said, I knew it.
Mm.
So that was one level. But to be honest, the damage is done, right? You can remove the spell, but then you've got all these, like, well, where do you start? All these limiting beliefs, all the chaos it created, um, that's when you have to start the reconstruction. And I also had the divine intervention in terms of I had Archangel Sandalphon appear in front of me one afternoon. And honestly, Vibak, I'm coming from a media film background and was not aware of angels, archangels. I mean, spirituality, I've been spiritual, but spirituality, teaching spirituality, not my path. So I didn't actually know who it was. But through a series of sequences, it came to me. This is Archangel Sandalphon. That was another shift, and some very bizarre things started to happen, which indicated there's a change in the energy.
So how, there's so much I'm wondering about, because going through this or breaking free, you said you had a lot of limiting beliefs. I mean, I believe when you live within those confines that you've been living in and you've seen people not see you, you kind of go into this survival mode, I would guess. And when you've been there so long, this becomes, patterns, and you're kind of it's planted in your being, and now you're starting to release all of this. So how did you start to go about that, to releasing those patterns?
So I became a Theta Healer, and I became a Theta Healer for myself. I never intended to give sessions to people. All the spiritual tools that I've learned were for myself because I came to realize that these healers couldn't help me. My issues were too deep, and that was when I started with the Theta Healing. I also began, and I'm not a channel, but there's a certain period in my life where I channeled a book, which everything came out through me about how incredible we are as souls, about how powerful we are, and basically my whole story came out. And so I learned that way, through the reconnection, I suppose, of my higher self, and different aspects of me vibrationally started to come together, higher frequencies, which I always thought I had, but I probably hadn't, not to that degree. So I started receiving the information as well.
But how, I must ask you, how did you trust it after being under that spell and then starting to trust yourself again and trust what's coming to you?
I have to say that that's another fantastic question and right on cue, because I didn't trust for a long time. My intuition hadn't worked throughout the whole period. So when you can't trust your intuition, it's like, my God, the compass is broken, right? The compass is broken. And I had to understand how and why. But I'm not a writer, but one morning, and this sounds a bit cliche, but honestly, I was desperate to create money. So I thought I'm gonna write an ebook about self-love. I thought maybe my issue is self-love, right? Everyone's talking about self-love at the moment. I didn't feel it was, but when I looked it up as a Google keyword, I thought, oh, great, maybe I can write a self-love book. The minute I started writing, I began to channel through information that I knew wasn't my conscious self. And it was so powerful what was coming out that I believed it. It resonate. When source resonates with you, it's truth. For me, it was my truth. So that's how.
It's a powerful discovery when you allow yourself to be that channel And I remember Zarius told me it was back in 2000. It was right after I had my first Dark Night of the Soul, where I was in a dark room. I was just crying and I just wanted to give up life. I was not happy and I felt like I should have been happy. I just had two beautiful baby girls and had a husband who loved me, just bought our new house, which we're still living in. And I just, everything looked amazing from the outside. But on the inside, I was really drowning. I've lost my connection. I started to choose to be like everybody else, started to fit into society, closed the door to my spirit guide. And so I really went into darkness. And I remember giving up, saying, okay, I'm ready to go if that's the case. I don't want to live if
Gosh.
this is the case. And I fell asleep and I woke up a couple of hours later and something had changed, and it was, I could feel the shift. It's hard to put into words because you're very heavy, you're tired, you're drained, you just want to give up life. I mean, you're so down. And then when my ego finally, you know, let everything go, I heard my soul. So that little voice was suddenly back. I hadn't heard it since I was a child,
Oh.
and I could hear that kind of beautiful little, I don't know how to, like, fairy voice telling me that you're okay. It's going to be good. Just this small, just the words that I needed to hear, that's just one step at a time. Just smile, just try to get up, just coaching me through what I was going through. And I actually got out of bed and my husband was like, what's going on? I'm like, no, I'm feeling a little better. And from that moment, I was deciding I wanted to tell myself that I was feeling better. I was feeling better. And I would
Mhm.
move my body, to so that more of that energy could flow throughout my body. And I remember telling when my spirit guide, when I opened up, he said, well, now it's the time for you to start trusting me completely and allowing me back into your life. And
Mm.
he stepped in. I remember he said, sit down, and he came in through my left side or the crown, but I could feel his whole essence come in, and he just, my whole energy shifted. I felt like I was being pushed, like somebody was pushing you. So it was actually a very um, physical feeling. Um, and then he just said, relax. And I just, because I had let go of my ego prior to this, I could just, okay, I'll go with it. I trust. And so that's how I started to trust the process. If you wish, trust my journey, trust
Mm.
in spirit again, because I made a choice not to do it. And I went into the dark night of the soul. And it gave me so much clarity. And, after that, and my intuition was, of course, gone too. If I had my intuition, I probably would have, um, done things differently. But I opened to start channeling,
Wow.
that's when I started to say, well, I know for certain that there's more to life than what meets the human eye. I know there is more because what's coming through me, it's not, first of all, it's not my frequency because I had to work. I was told to exercise because I couldn't hold the frequency. So I started to exercise. So the thing is, I divided or devoted, I guess is the word, devoted my life to spirit again. So I'm not asking, who do I want to be? I'm asking, how can I serve? How can I
Mm.
serve my soul, the universe, my spirit guides? How can I be of assistance? That's when everything shifted, when I started, not to think about who do I want to be in the world, just turning in and going, okay, so I have this channel ability. Let me just allow it to flow. Let me see what comes out. And it actually ended up being the book, writing back, and back here. I channeled for a whole year for a group of people. And that was my,
Wow.
what would you call it, Jada? That's kind of my testament that what I'm telling and what I'm living is I was living what I was preaching, if you wish. I was showing, and I was doing this in front of people for a whole year, and I could see the effect on their lives. Some of these people, this is a long time ago. They are with me today. They're my good friends. They're supporting me. So seeing the impact of
Right.
allowing yourself to let your gifts unfold as it's meant to, that shifted everything for me. And that shifted my, of course, my energy, because I started to trust in divine guidance instead. And my, of course, my intuition came back and all that. So I don't know. I just wanted to share that because I think discovering your gifts is really powerful. And it sounds like you discovered that after, in the aftermaths of what you've been through, just like me.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, wow. Thank you for sharing that. That's a real, it's through that sharing in your book with those people, is it's the transformation that you experience, that you witness, that something's changed, isn't it? It's through that experience. Um, I so my gifts, yeah, I mean, I think that it's because I have the gift in the film, and I know my filmmaking was always spiritual anyway. So I think that was one channel through which I was sort of helping humanity to shift, through this new earth, new age. Um, the spell deepened the soul. So for me, it made me realize how powerful I was on a different level.
Mm.
Um, because it was a real solo journey. And I think that when you are solo and you don't even have your intuition, uh, you've gone beyond survival mode. It's another level, right? Um, the only way is up, right?
You're right.
So that kind of experience gave me the gift of realizing how powerful each of us truly are, you know. And I know we all create our own story. And to a certain extent, when you go through those experiences, you witness, eventually the higher self comes out at some point and witnesses how you're creating all of this. All the time you think, well, how am I creating all of this struggle? Like, I know it's not right, but I'm still perpetually creating it. And I was able to realize there was a separation going on between my conscious self, which was living under the spell, and the higher self, which was like, but I know this is not how life works, like how you said. And because prior to the scenario, I mean, I knew how universal law worked anyway, action, creation. And I'm there thinking, like, I've got all this action, but there's no creation going on. It's like Groundhog Day forever.
Oh,
So I think part of me realized that how we create that, even though on one level it was done to me, but I could see myself consciously repeating this insane story. Um, so I think it really the gifts came out in terms of like beginning to trust myself and my power a lot more, thinking, well, if I could create the film life and I could create the life where I was under the spell, and now my channeling is telling me that I can create any life I want, then I'm I'm going to create any life I want now consciously. And it's really about consciously creating, because I know that when I put my finger on that coin, that was a conscious decision,
mm,
right? I
it
can't
was.
say.
And it shifted your whole. Okay, so this makes me think, because I know you work with the Akashic Records as well. So in that moment, you were in a, what would we call that from a soul perspective? You're in a crossroads. So you're in a specific time in space where you're shifting timelines, right?
Right.
So you made a conscious decision in that moment, and you
Yeah.
actually shifted your whole timeline. So
Right.
how did you get, have you, what do you do with your gift to realign, or have you recreated that timeline, or are you still on a different timeline?
So when I go into the Akashic Records, I essentially um, it's like so a spell doesn't necessarily come up in an Akashic record because it's not a soul level contract, as we should say. It was just a decision I made. What will I be shown in the records is at this certain point in time, um, I started to experience struggle, blah, blah, blah. So I can eliminate the struggle, I can eliminate that. But the spell was actually eliminated through different healing methods. But in the Akashic Records, what comes up was, for example, when I said I was during sleep taken to another dimension and my career was taken. So that was a soul level bargaining which happened to me. When I'm in the record, I can see when it happened, what year. I match it up to my memory. I just dissolve it. So I don't change my timeline. It's I just dissolve the contracts. So those imprints and those energetic patterns are no longer constraining us. So I release that stuff.
So how does that affect the destiny?
Oh,
It is
completely.
divine, the divine destiny that is holding all the energy for this incarnation, and all the timelines that, or where you can cross over if you wish to shift. So how does that play out?
Right, because everything is free will. So I don't think there is a predetermined outcome for any soul's life. I
No,
think that,
no.
um,
We have all these timelines that we can change from. If I'm just using the timelines now, but
mm,
how would you look at what happened to you compared to your destiny? So did you shift your destiny by putting your finger
uh,
on that?
yeah, I
Yeah.
did. I shift a potential different outcome.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And
and
so
I think,
so you're creating a new destiny for yourself at this
right,
moment. Yeah.
yes, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
how do you know now that do you feel like you're fully, completely back to your authentic self? I mean, more wise and experienced, of course, but the authentic soul energy?
I am, but I have to say that I probably lost a bit of innocence now.
Mm.
You know, when you're younger, you have a more curiosity. I was very curious, obviously, about life and about things. So the experience has made me very discerning. So it's a new authenticity that I'm experiencing. It's still me, but I'm a lot more conscious and careful about where I place my attention, where I place my energy, and all my actions. Whereas before I may have been more flippant. I can't say one is either better than the other because we're learning, and if you're not sometimes a bit carefree, you're not going to learn. We have to make mistakes. I don't even know if we should call them mistakes.
No, I don't call them a mistake. Or my spirit guide Gloria does not. She said there are no mistakes. You do
Exactly.
what you do to learn what you need to learn, and that's it. All in the
Right.
name of love.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Um, so I'd say I'm pretty much my authentic self, but it's always an evolution.
Yeah.
It's never
Yes,
a
it is.
final
Yes, it is. Like I said, I did, visit the dark night of my soul twice. It's not too
Right.
long ago since I was down there, actually. It was in my 40s, my beginning of my 40s. So, yes, because if you haven't released all the patterns and you're still repeating stuff, there's parts to the story that you haven't tuned into and released. I mean, it will take on a different form, but it will appear again. And so I actually had just, it was a different form. I've been doing this for so long, and I was feeling a shame, the frequency, that low vibration of shame again. So especially hitting that ground and going back into that dark night of the soul after spending like 10 years, 15 years um, with doing this work, helping people, knowing and teaching this stuff. And I still did it for myself. And so I'm saying we're all here to learn, we're all here to grow. But the thing that keeps you, of course, I wasn't down there for long, because you now have the knowledge, and you also have wisdom and insight on how to shift and how to move and how to be patient with yourself. And not only that, you have the gift of knowing, even though you can't feel or sense in that moment, you know they're there because you have devoted your life, or the last years of your life, to, for me, being guided by spirit and channeling. And so I knew what was going on. And it was just being, comfortable in an uncomfortable situation, knowing that I'm an 8. I've learned a lot on the Spiritual Quest podcast, speaking to different teachers, because then okay, I have the duality of darkness and light is very strong in me. And I go, no question. I feel like, and
Wow.
things are,
Yeah.
so just knowing yourself and knowing how I react, it's so much, as a human being as well, it's so much easier for me to be patient
Mm,
and to trust in divine guidance and just allow myself to be sometimes, not trying to find a
mm,
solution, but just being in the moment and choosing love. For me, that's so important, just choosing love.
mm. That's so beautiful. It's so true. And it's the slowing down, isn't it? I think these experiences teach us to slow down. um, Once you've been down, you've bought the t-shirt, right? You know, you've come back, and like you say, you know it already. It's easier to come back, and
Yeah,
you don't really fall as far as you did the first time round.
you're right.
And
And you're not that afraid. You're not afraid of what's the emotion or the feeling or the experience. And I think that's key doing it the second time around. It's more like it's hard, it's draining, but still it's work that needs to be done. And you do it with another sense of purpose. For me, it was purpose going through that, finding
mm,
out and realigning me to this shift that we all go through, and how I want to show up in the world, how I want to serve, and just being aware that I've grown, I've expanded, and there's more waiting for me. So tearing away from old stories is necessary sometimes, but sometimes we don't want to because they're beautiful.
yeah,
They're just so beautiful, and they're so powerful, and there's all anchored in, you just had so much
mm,
passion and purpose doing them, and then suddenly you find out that you're outgrown them and you just,
mm,
no, I don't want to. So that was kind of my story. I just felt like I
mm,
needed a shift, but I had no clue what, and I just thought, I'm too old to go through this again. You see, old stories. That was not my mind. I just heard it from somebody else, right? So I was like,
yeah,
oh, that's not you. Come on now.
mm,
Let's get up. Let's do something about this. So
mm,
being patient with you. Well, it's been wonderful having this discussion with you, but let me, at the end of our conversation here, just would you share a little bit how you walk through a session with your clients, so people who's listening in can kind of get a sense of how they,
mm.
they can get help from you.
Yeah. So, I mean, I really ultimately want to show people that they are absolutely limitless in what they can achieve. So, there is no limitation apart from the story you tell yourself. And um, I think I probably have a specialism in trying to help people reclaim that power, reclaim that sovereignty, reclaim that divine connection. Um, and realize that they are creating it, and we can easily discreate it, and create a new story which aligns with us all the time. You know, we have to evolve. It's a process of learning. You need to grow through experience, and you also need to understand how your actions create um, your life. You know, just being more conscious. So yeah.
Right. So, what specifically, if you could be more specific in what you can offer them?
I mean, I offer really in-depth Akashic readings. I mean, they're like 2 hour long readings. I don't know too much about how other people do readings because I've only ever concentrated on my own, but I'm able to tell people their skill set on a soul level, their sort of divine DNA. And through knowing what that is, that's how you create. I mean, you're going to create abundance through flowing through that gift, through that skill set. And I'm able also to tell people exactly where their soul originated from, in terms of which constellation or which planet, which also comes with a frequency. And that frequency, again, when you align with it, it opens up your potential, your gifts. So it really is about showing people beneath the personality who they are,
Mm.
and what incredible potential they can use if they align with those frequencies, which are natural to them.
Of course, I love this kind of work. Of course, I do. I mean, it's in my line of work as well. But um, knowing that a lot of people have these questions, how do you feel about um, all the shifts that we've been going through? We just had the Lionsgate, by the way. It was incredible for me personally. I was dancing the next day. I just
Oh,
was so
wow.
free. It was just, we had a huge ceremony for some of my members, and it was releasing the old stories of the
Mm.
3D stories and to ascend to a higher frequency and to just be free. And we all had, we wrote and we had fire and all that, and it was just incredible. I just wanted to share that because I still have it in me. I just still feel
Wow.
that, how important it is to come together and actually go through and release, and to be honest and truthful about our struggles. We're not so alone anymore. I mean, we're all, souls and having a human experience, and it can be challenging, as you know. So, any words of inspiration for those out there, maybe struggling a little bit?
I think, I mean, from what I realize, a lot of people suffering from overwhelm in this day and age. There's so much information, there's so much going on. And I know personally for myself, and I think it helps others, is like I said, it's the slowing down. I think it's, eliminate what you don't need. It's not necessary to have everything, to say yes to everything, to try everything. The most important thing is to actually focus on your presence and your being present with people, being present with yourself. It's a miracle. When we're in presence, it's miracles happening, because that's when all the resistance drops. We're not holding a fear, we're not holding an opinionated view, we're just allowing.
Mm.
And you find that in that process of allowing with yourself, um, things shift for you in the right way.
So true.
So
So true. Thank you so much. I mean, this has been wonderful. I could talk to you for hours. So I might have to just have you back for another session later on if you don't mind. But
yeah,
thank you so much for sharing your gift with us, Jada. It's been wonderful.
thank you so much, Vivek, for having me. It's been
Thank
amazing conversation.
Thank you. And if you're listening and you're now thinking, oh, I think Jada would be able to help me on my journey, then you'll find all her contact information in the episode description. Thank you for joining us. And remember that when you sign up for the Spiritual Quest Newsflash, You'll receive bonus materials and invitations to live events starting this September. So make sure you'll join the conversation by visiting the Spiritual Quest podcast page. You'll find the link in the episode description. Sending you lots of love and light from me, your host, Vibeke Garnos, always guided by spirit. Bye now.